Hello and good morning. Welcome to Sage Thyme. I'm Lillian, presented here today by the early pre-dawn hours, those moments of stillness and quiet that preside before the sun begins to bring its light onto our landscape as the evening exhales. Amidst all the human collective thinkings and streams of thought, of all the waking up do lists and must have and must need and go-goes, I hold space here. With you and in the presence of a story that I was awoken a few hours ago in the early morning hours, midnight hours. A story that quickly unfolded as a snapshot into what I began to speak about 2 videos ago when I discussed the Celestine Draegons and the Lemurians. It's a very intense energy, so I have to move slowly in my presence and tone and voice and words to best avoid distorted influences. And it when it's intense like that, there's a caveat that wants to be mentioned. It doesn't always mean it's heavy energy, even though it can feel heavy. Not heavy in the way spiritual community will speak of things as not desirable or wanted. It can feel heavy because I'm a physical structure, and it's very powerful, very ancient, and simultaneously very future. It's very ancient information and very future channeling, so to speak, if that makes sense. Recognizing the absence of linear time. So this story, this snapshot into a moment in the ancient Lemurian history on our planet, pre-Atlantean. I'm hearing not so distant in time from the Atlantean era, though that time scale can mean a lot of things. It's important to know that at this point in time, Lemurians were a much shorter people and far leaner by standards of what we imagine humans to be. Late 3 foot, early 4 feet. I'm hearing smaller. And they were often forest dwellers, though they were also coastal and islanders, but not exclusively, and more so forest dwellers. But I'm feeling and hearing that this particular time frame, this interaction between the celestial dragons and the Lemurians, launched a migration of and a separation of many of these ancient Lemurians from the forest dwelling, cave dwelling, and others more safe and hidden into more coastal, more open air. I keep seeing water comes in, of course, this is part of it. The Celestine, that blue lace color coming in from the Celestine Draegons. As you remember in my last discussion, of the first 5 that were born from the 3 that came from the 2 being the divine feminine and divine masculine principles, which were the first extensions and segmentations of the source all. Sometimes it's called the first birthings, right? And when the 3 gave unto 5, two of the 5 were polarities of the divine masculine, and 2 of the 5 were polarities of the divine feminine. And then the 5th was its own. It's another conversation. And of the 2 feminine were of these etheric dragons were the Celestine Dragons. Were one of them, of the 2. And then, of course, the polarity, the other feminine. And the polarity I'm getting right now of the other feminine had an extension, fragmented itself as a consciousness into the planet of the earth, the heart of the earth, that consciousness that entered the earth as Tiamat, Tiamat, also written about in ancient Sumerian texts as Tiamat. She was the darker, not evil, just darker, heavier consciousness, and so she was able to enter because she had a more dense ability to enter the materials. So she descended and became the consciousness. She took on the burden of density with her immense love and her immense power, of course. She wasn't the one of the 5. She was an extension of the dark feminine principle, the pure and true dark feminine principle. One that understands and resonates frequencies and tones and harmonics of reverence and creatrix, and more. I'm not going to get into that too much right now. Okay. There's so much. And then over time, the consciousness, of course, of Tiamat created extensions of herself on the planet through humans and animals and dinosaurs and plants and elementals and more. And so the Lemurian were a sacred extension, a sacred creation of hers amongst many. And before the Atlanteans came, or I'm hearing that they were present, but did not know the Lemurians existed, nor did they know the Atlanteans existed at this point in time. But the Atlanteans were well on track to begin what would be the technological development and social and cultural, psychological development that led to their downfall, their self-demise. Highly advanced, but they went in a timeline of disconnecting from the heart of the earth, the Tiamat, where the Lemurians lived in that harmonic rhythm, and they existed as the tones. They spoke, they moved, they existed as the different tones and songs of Tiamat. And knowing what was coming with the timeline that the Atlanteans were on track with, the sister primordial dragon of the Tiamat, the Celestine Dragon, came down through the firmament into the atmosphere and the surface of the earth, and made contact and connected with the Lemurians. Of course, there had been preparation and all this in assistance to the Celestines, in assistance to their sister primordial dragon, or granddaughter, grandniece, however you would. None of that is right, and it's also kind of helpful. But yeah. And so the collaboration, the assistance for Tiamat's intent to provide for her children, specifically the Mu, the Lemurians, a connection with connecting their womb state and their heart that was so beautifully connected with the earth, bridging that with the heavens, so to speak, the etheric, lighter intonations, the higher frequency pitches. Because as all of us know, frequencies are the high pitches, and yet it's the rhythms and the resonance of the lower pitches and the dips, like our heartbeat, that gives life. The thung-thung. That's what gives life. When we only have high frequency, there is no life. It's like, it's just a high line pitch of noise, of high pitch. So the resonance, the density, is what allows tones to have rhythm, harmonics, frequency, texture, story, song, melody, all of those things. So it's important to remember that when people say things like raise your frequency, there's a distorted influence in that. There must be balance to avoid becoming simply a high pitch of nondescript and piercing. Anyway, that's another philosophical conversation. Well, not philosophical, but it's a storytelling. Good confirmation. So, as designed in divine timing, the Celestine Draegons, in their wispy, non-shape, entered the firmament of the Earth's atmosphere. And this is where you can start seeing when they begin, when they first enter, and the more time a primordial dragon essence is within the firmament of any planet, they take a shape, like Tiamat, because of the density. And that's where we start to see things like on our earthly planet, what the different shapes of what we understand and recognize as dragons. Though in the cosmos, they aren't really much of a shape at all, more of just a swirly, wispy ether. So they entered. And their such a funny word. Their target for interaction amongst the Lemurians were, of course, the feminine, the females. And there certainly was most definitely an interaction and integration with the male species. But here with the full feminine species, they entered to shift the mother, the maiden mother matriarch stages, to enhance them. Is challenging, and I don't know if I'll publish this because this story is so new. So it coming through, I get paused if I say anything too incorrect or a little bit too askew. This intermingling of the blue lace Celestine Draegons with the females of the Lemurian in a divine union of feminine with the Celestine's sister, Tiamat's essence, to integrate the ability of higher channeling and perspective. And this is where we started to see the feminine role on Earth of Lemurians go from more of a, strictly speaking, medicine woman, earthbound sage wisdom into a higher cosmic connectivity and channeling ability, visioning ability, and even more soul traveling and ability to download advanced I don't want to use the word technology because then we go to ideas like what the Atlanteans brought in, and what we're bringing in right now. It's a biotech. It's a consciousness technology instead of artificial intelligence, AI. It's consciousness intelligence, or what people would call spiritual intelligence, CI. And so this was the purpose of the Celestine Draegons coming in and entering. And so they presented themselves as, for many, it was really more interpretation. Our eyes see what we are capable and able to see, and also in alignment with what we're comfortable with seeing. And also, there's many influences. Color will influence. For instance, this is a very brilliant and light blue, but our eyes will see it because we don't have the influence of what daylight brings into it. Our eyes can see colors as gray by candlelight and by evening. And I feel like there's some sort of a metaphor trying to present itself here with the contrast of the dark feminine of Tiamat with the sacred, pure and true dark feminine of Tiamat with the sacred, pure and true light feminine of the Celestine. And so the Lemurians would often see these dragons that entered the human realm, the firmament, the earth realm, the firmament, but around the earth, and would come and land on the planet or close to it. The closer they got to the earth and the core of the earth, the more shape they took. And so Lemurians would see these as these beautiful, angelic, feminine, female-like angelic figures, tall and long and lean. And in that white, blue lace coloring and different shades of the blue. That's why I kept running over to the idea of the periwinkle, or turquoise is another. It really depended on the region, was how the eyes were able to perceive the shade of blue. And these female angelic looking dragons, in truth, if you simply turned, even physically, your angle and your sight in a different way to see them, you could see that they were actually this form of what we would see as dragons. And so that could be seen, of course, by the Lemurian women that had dimensional sight, more developed and advanced sight. And these women were blessed. Not because, strictly speaking, they deserved it more, but because they had the developed sight and perspective and ability to open their inner micro and nanocosmic landscapes to receive. But everybody was blessed, male, female, from infant to elder, of the Lemurians. And this blessing was an encodement within the genetic structure of the Lemurians, an advancement, a very profound, seemingly quantum leap advancement. And here's the important thing about quantum leaps. That really wants to come through. People will say things like, yes, you can have instantaneous poof and just go from this to that. Oh, this doesn't want to be spoken by the old programs. This was happening at the beginning. This is why I kept having to slow down. The old programs and thought forms that reside within the atmosphere that we live in. You've heard me talk about it. They get very, very resistant when something's about to break their structure. A structure that isn't true or real, but yet it is, only to the extent that we are convinced by it and participate in it. So, this is why this slow and gentle conversation is happening right now. Because it takes time for things to fully be allowed and to happen and to integrate. So when we see things like what would look like a quantum leap, prior to that quantum leap was a very long pause of no thing, of no change in an evident and obvious way. But internally, many of you go through this. Many of you go through this. Internally, the work is just huge and powerful and kicking to the curb. But it won't seem evident. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's this massive, extraordinary shift and change that is now physical. And not just physical by appearance, but in vocal tone, in resonance, emulation, in presence, in everything. It's the evolution, like a birth. We don't see the baby. And before we had technology that even, allowed us to see that. We don't see the baby, but the baby's in there and growing in utero. And then all of a sudden, there's this fully formed infant that is born. But we don't see all the massive things and changes and structural shifts and inner creations that are occurring, not just with the developing from fertilized cell to cell mass to zygote to embryo to so forth, not just within the little being, but throughout the vessel that is creating it. And this is the feminine aspect, that quiet, silent, in the seen, in the dark, the occult, right? The unseen, that's what occult means. Creatrix capacity, that's the sacredness of the dark feminine. And so the sacredness of the Celestine, sister feminine dragons coming in, presenting themselves to many as angelic beings, a taller, more refined, symmetrical collection of beingness. It was a dragon, and those who could see the dragon moving up through in like a shifting mirage, could see the shape of that dragon, as well as the angelic etheric wisps and lines that come with the true primordial non-form form outside our Earth's firmament. Oh, normally I write these things because they come out more fluidly, but side note here, they were very insistent that I spoke them out, and I can see why. When I speak these deeper, greater truths, again, that clenching across the chest and the throat, and that sickness feeling in the gut, that's the old social structures, the egregores that say, no, it must be this, what we call the patriarchal structuring, all of that, those programs. Ugh, they served a wonderful purpose. And much like the Atlanteans, they went too far, as can happen with any polarity, perhaps. Well, yeah. So speaking it helps break these there it is. Speaking these greater, deeper truths and wisdoms out loud to an audience, whether they show up or not, helps break these egregores and dissolves them. And doing it with love and reverence and respect for the old, for what was, even if it was harmful and oppressive and, all the things. It's not only those things. It's so much more that's also beneficial, right? So speaking these deeper, greater, whole context truths, of who we are at our spiritual and essence core, at our divine smart core, which is all the things. That speaking out, that reverberation with love, with loving acceptance and compassionate understanding, that's what dissolves it and alchemizes it into a reconciliatory polarity union, so that it can transform and transcend into something greater, as are we. This cannot be done with any lilts or hints, even fragments of. It cannot be done fully, and it won't be complete until those fragments, lilts of resentment or judgment or rar or nanner are resolved, witnessed, felt, understood and accepted, brought down into the heart and all the way down into the womb area for men as well, into their sacral and their root, connecting with the earth and alchemizing into, again, loving acceptance, compassionate understanding. And I can feel the resistance. Because there's always a resistance to death. There's always a resistance to the passageway of the birth canal or the portal. By design is compressive. It's beautiful, and that's okay. We don't have to fear it or be angry at it or make it wrong, because it's not. It needs to be that, so that we can move through it, however that looks. Within the womb, within the earth, creating, coal into diamonds, carbon molecules compressed intensely over time, no quantum leaps here, make that pure, beautifully aligned, symmetrical structuring with clarity and clear openness and availability for light and density and darkness to create spectral. All those colors. We need both. We must recognize and be able to get to the point of loving acceptance of the value and importance and fallibility capacity of both. And to hold that within us, to allow it to have space within us, so that from it, with it, and all of it, and the intention of Source, which is love. Love is the creative container and force. Because love's prerogative is always creation, expression observation, recognition, contraction, death, self-reflection, transmutation, transformation, evolution, development, and rebirth. And so, the two sister principles of Tiamat, of the 5, pardon me, primordial dragons, etheric dragons, and the Celestine, primordial etheric dragons, came together. And I'm hearing there's so much more to it too, but this is where we are in this story. And there were physical changes among the Lemurian. They were generally, by physical descript, a gentle, darker skin. Not very light dark, not dark, just different blends I'm hearing. With many different colored eyes. Dark hair. But at this juncture, the female Lemurians, the women, so to speak, were born as infant girls with dark hair. No, I'm being corrected. Yes, they were born with dark hair. It grew out in their still young infant years into a very light blonde, and then darkened in their late youth, early adulthood, that maiden phase, the teens into the 20s. And when they became mothers, their hair was, for the greater part, darker, often. These were signs of, especially the ones who were of a lineage that would be what we would call things like mystics or shamans, or they had other words that were better words, quite frankly, and more definitive, because what we understand in even amongst First Nation, Aborigine, tribal folks, all that wisdom was lost, I'm hearing. But much of it was kept, but much of it was lost. Which is why many people going through the transformation present day are doing so without a guru or a teacher in a physical sense. They are being required to connect in an etheric sense, be it angels, dragons, star beings, celestials, and on and on and on, past, present, and future. So as the lineages progressed with the Lemurians through the matriarchal line, and I'm hearing also it would often go from matriarch, so from mother to son, who would carry the gene dormantly. It wouldn't present within him, but it would present as a divine masculine in his role as partner and parent, and holding space and protection in a way that was very balanced. And so from him, then he would have a daughter offspring, and that daughter offspring would often be the next wise woman, wisdom. That's what they were called, wisdoms. In their own language. There's more. I'm told that in the mother phase of the triple goddess, maiden, mother, matriarch. Somewhere in the mother phase, midpoint, the feminine would, it would be activated when a woman gave birth. The physical act of a baby going through the birth canal activated a woman's genetic coding to become a wisdom. And that would, depending on the culture of the people that she lived with, if it was supported, it would be a gradual ascent and expression. But wouldn't fully express and and expose. I keep hearing explode itself throughout the mother phase until midpoint of raising a child. If she had several children, it would be midpoint of the average, the median. If there was one, it would be their mid-years before they became an adult, around 10 years old by our framework of years. And at that point, she would physically start changing. I'm hearing her hair would go from dark and then to white, sometimes both. She would get taller, although there's debate or light dispute as to whether this Lemurian feminine wisdom would physically become taller or if she would simply appear that way. I'm seeing an image of her higher self being embodied, which made her appear physically as taller. So the answer is yes to both. And then eye color would change and lighten, regardless if they were green or blue eyes. They would become more of a brilliant green or blue. If they were brown eyes, they would become more of a brilliant with coppers and reds. It was just beautiful. Oh yeah. So it was these combinations of the darker and the light, but more brilliant. I think we're going to close with that because this is a very long video and I know I've been talking slow and gently. And if any of you have been able to stay through this video and stay with me during this transmission and this dissolvement and alchemization of old structures and old programs that have silenced these truths and all the truths that are within them and came from them. Thank you for sticking with me and being witness to it. Thank you for receiving these transmissions that are meant for you also. Thank you for being a part of this sacred space and circle. Do we want to? Okay, I guess so. I guess for funsies. We're going to see if a dragon card wants to come out. And again, I don't at all go with the descriptors in interesting. Had a feeling a darker appearing dragon would come through. It barely came through, like it stuck out but wasn't going to come all the way out. And I'll show you here in a sec, but there's another card that wants to, there it is. Woo! Okay. Oh, I love it. okay, so this is kind of the Easter egg prize at the end. Here are the first card that came out is Destiny. And what wants to stand out is that darker, that Tiamat, heavier, divine feminine energy. What came out, so that was the first card. What came out third is the Illuminary. This really goes in alignment with that Celestine Dragon. And what came out in the middle, let's see if I can hold all three of these up together. And then there's one more at the end that came out, popped out underneath them all. What is balance? I mean, how awesome is that, right? And then perfectly, just to drill in the message about quantum leaps not being actual by appearance, that everything takes time, but not always seen. We have Father Time. And that came underneath the Illuminaire. The message is really clear. You are doing the work. You are doing extraordinary. And it's all the things. And it's that temperance. And it takes time. And you are so divinely supported and so divinely loved. And also supported and loved by all of us, the me's and you's in the world. We are in this together. In the fourth dimensional spaces, more of a pocket realm within that, for safety speaks. We are all holding hands and sharing hearts sacredly. It's a space where nothing can get in except those with the purest of heart and love intent. And we help and support and uplift and communicate with each other there. It is sacred and it is impenetrable, because it only exists within the space of love. So be that. Trust, love, allow, nourish and nurture yourself, and listen. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. It's a big, long one, I know. And it's worth it. Those were the gifts the dragon just showed. Boom. So much love and blessings to you. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day and time and moments. Rhythm and melody. Frequency and resonance. Reverberate, emulate, be love. Truth. Aho.